Next, Jocko, how do you handle employee morale after terminating a popular supervisor for cause?
Okay, so I mean it's kind of a rough one, but it's not something that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen all the time because a lot of times people that are popular, they do well, but sometimes people are popular for the wrong reasons. They're popular because they let people cut corners. They're popular because they slack what?
What is this for cause? Just to
meaning they weren't efficient in their job. Yeah, it's you failed.
Okay.
Basically, you're not up to par.
Oh, gotcha.
And so people sometimes popular supervisors, yeah, like I said, sometimes they're popular because they do great and they're great leaders, but a lot of times they're popular because they let people get away with murder.
That's your boy.
Yeah. And so when you figure that out, that the person's not doing their job and not a good leader, then you got to fire them. I mean, you've tried to counsel them, all that stuff, but now you got to fire them. So how are you going to get through that? Well, for one thing, the number one thing you got to do is explain why to the people, to the troops. You got to explain why this person is being removed. And just like we just kind of learned from the opening piece about being direct and not avoiding the conversation. Have the conversation, be straightforward. And now this is a key piece. Don't be disparaging of the person that's getting fired, right? Mm-hmm. That guy was a dirtbag on you because these people are, some of them have a relationship with them. Yeah. And so you don't want to just immediately create animosity, but you do have to be straightforward. You do have to say, look, we had standards here. He was out of bounds on these things right here, and we just can't do that in this company. Mm-hmm. We got to hold the line. There's ethical reasons, there's legal reasons, or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. So that's that. The other thing is you got to inspire some conversation. You got to inspire some questions so that they can, because you're trying to close the gap of the relationship, right? Mm-hmm. You fired somebody, and now there's a relationship gap, because that person that you fired is the relationship between. They connect the relationship between his subordinates and you. Mm. So now there's a gap in the relationship. So you got to fill that gap. So you got to start getting the conversations going, talking to them, and getting them, just like I said, closing the gap in the relationship. The other thing is you got to explain what the follow-on plan is very clearly, and you got to introduce whoever's taking their place. You got to introduce them. I mean, immediately. They got to be ready to rock and roll. They got to be read in. You have to counsel them on like, hey, you know why I'm putting you in here? Be a leader, yes. Run this job site, yes. I need you to build these relationships with these guys. Mm. You're now taking over a relationship. You're taking over boss, yes, but you're taking over the relationships that he had. Mm. Now, here's what you got to do it. You got to go and you got to be humble. You got to ask questions. You got all the standard leadership stuff. But you got to get them focused in the right area. You also got to make sure who's ever coming in to take their place, make sure that they understand what the political terrain is. Oh, yeah. Which guys were boys with the guy you fired, which guys didn't like him anyway. So you got to explain all that to him, so that he understands what's going on. And the last thing I'll say on this is you'll find that oftentimes somebody that you think is mission critical, they're actually not mission critical. They're not as mission critical as they think they are, and they're not as mission critical as you think they are. And others, when someone is doing a bad job, or someone is not a good leader, the other people, even though they might be buddy with them, they know it. Mm. And they know they should be removed. And when you do it, a lot of times the respect level goes up. Mm. So that means the other people that are in that position will, or the subordinates, a lot of them are ready to step up too. They're ready. They're just going, God, it took you forever to fire this guy. I mean, we were doing what we got to do, and he was popular and everything. He was nice, but we see where it's coming from. Mm. So have confidence when you do it. Be thoughtful. But when you make the decision and you know it's the right thing to do it. Get that other leader ready to rock and roll. Explain everything very clearly. Explain why you're doing it. And build and fill that gap in relationships that now it's going to exist.
Mm. When you say mission critical, what does that mean?
Meaning without this guy,
oh right, the mission's
gonna fail.
Yeah,
If Echo wasn't here for the podcast, we wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, so
actually we would.
No, I'd
find some other guy.
I'd
be like, hey, can you press record on this machine over here? And someone would say, yeah, and I'd say, cool, and then I'd say, do it. And I'd say, well, do you know how to make YouTube videos? Because that would be an addition. Since Echo doesn't do much of that, maybe you could help with that.
Yeah.
No, but mission critical just means a guy that, and this happens, you see that technology companies where you got some guy that's really in the code more than anybody else. And so, if I leave, no one's going to understand what I built. Yeah. Well, first of all, you did a bad job if no one's going to understand what you built. But and it even happens, I've seen it with construction. If you're building something more complex, like all of a sudden you got one guy that really understands the details, and it can be hard because everyone thinks, oh, if we lose him, he's the only guy that knows how to do X, Y, Z. Yeah. So people freak out about it.
Yeah. It almost seems like that's more of a comfort zone thing. If people think that, you know?
It's a definite comfort zone thing. Yeah. You know what I can say? I don't think I've ever, I'm trying to think. I don't think I've seen it yet where the mission critical guy got fired and things fell apart.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm trying to think if I've seen it. I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen it. Maybe someone will happen one day.
Maybe.